Welcome to another episode of the Independent Thinkers Podcast. This is a show where we talk about local life, sports, and politics. And today, before I do that, this is our first show on WNCR TV. We're very grateful for that. Now we have the opportunity to be able to bring great people to you, people throughout the communities who are making a difference in the community. And today, I have a very special guest. He's a well-known throughout the community. Has a very, probably the most popular morning show in the area. Mr. Bronson Williams, how you doing, sir?
I want to say I'm doing quite well. How about yourself, sir?
I'm doing good, man. WNCR, first of all, myself and my viewers would like to thank you for the opportunity of being on WNCR. So we can just bring what we do to the people, you know.
Well, welcome to the WNCR TV family.
Thank you. I expect some great things going forward, you know. A lot of people already know some things about you, you know. I mean, it's, you know, especially people that watch the show every morning, sure. You know. But tell me a little bit about yourself and try to reach for things that people may not already know about you, you know.
That'll be hard because I try to be an open book, right? So from my life being in the public spectrum has always had people know things about me from growing up in the TV industry, growing up in radio and et cetera. You know, I've just always been around. So I can't even think of anything that I could share that people really wouldn't know about me. Yeah. I went to Rocky Mount Senior High.
Griffon in the building.
All day long. Okay. And so went off to East Carolina University, majored in mass communications there all day long.
Wow. Yeah.
Purple and gold. Okay?
Purple and gold.
All day. And so, you know, came back here. Well, actually, not even before I even came back here, I was in television from WHIG to WNCR TV. To then purchasing WNCR TV. Had the Promise 107.3, now the Promise 102.5. So and had other stations throughout the area. So did a lot of different things. Maybe people know I had a radio station in Jacksonville before, or down in Greenville with 98.3 WLGT, and I had a daycare center in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I think most of the time, you know, you put those things in the bios. I ran for office several times, so you had to have your bio. So a number of things I've shared with people throughout my course of being around.
When did you get into know that you wanted to be into television or radio? Like, did you wake up one morning, hear your voice, and was like, or is this something that, I know you went to school for that at ECU, pre-ECU, you know, you got to dress for what you aspire to be. So while you were putting your clothes on, what is it that inspired you to go into television?
You know, that's quite interesting because the way I got into television was at WHIG TV.
Wow.
So me and my friend Braxton was doing a business called Webmaster Plus. Yeah. So we were designing websites, doing computer repair. And things of that nature. And so
you know my pain and struggle at times.
All day long. And so from that, you know, Herb Greenberg, who was the founder of that, we designed a website for WHIG TV. And instead of her paying us, he said, well, why don't we give you a TV show? So we had a television show called Your Internet Connections. Wow. We first came on at 6 o'clock on like a Friday afternoon or something like that, and later changed to another time. Can't even remember. I think it was 9 o'clock another time. But anyway, it was in ninth grade.
Wow.
And so I was doing this. So actually I got into the television business way before I went off to East Carolina University. And really that was a struggle in school, right? Because I'm sitting in class, doing things for a grade. I'm like, well, as soon as I get out here, I'm doing this for some money, right? So that was a challenge there. Being a student at ECU, dealing with that situation.
Good. Now you decided you've ran for a couple of offices. You've held within the Democratic Edgecombe County Democratic Party a couple of offices. And you're currently a candidate for city council in Ward 3. That's where you grew up at, I believe, on Hargrove Street.
That's right.
I believe right across the street from the park.
All day.
Ward 3 currently has a councilman, good guy, Richard Joyner, you know. What do you feel as though you can bring to the table that's going to differ you from and it reminds me of the lady that calls into the show. What do you think you can bring to the table that's different from what people are already getting from Mr. Joyner?
Well, I think it's about expanding, right? So it's not about per se doing something different, but expanding from where we are to where we can go. And so some of the challenges that we face with current representation is really not being from the community and knowing the people of the community. While I might have stopped by and visited a couple of times, did I really grow up here? Did I lose some blood in the neighborhood, so to speak, from riding on bikes and things of this nature, knowing the neighbors? And certainly our community has certainly changed over the years. But when it comes to what I hope to bring to the city council is we really got to improve our communication through our community.
Oh, yes. Excuse me, I mean,
go ahead.
But I had just saw this. I saw that they're doing newsletters now.
Absolutely.
So you mean expand further than that, obviously.
Well, we have a situation of delayed information.
And
so too often we allow other people to tell the story of Rocky Mount versus Rocky Mount telling its own story.
That's true.
And so it's almost like hearing a song. You hear it one time, you kind of know it. You hear it the second time, you know it. And the third time, you're singing along. And so when we allow people in the community to get out and start sharing a narrative of Rocky Mount, it's not necessarily true. It's hard to forget the untruth.
Correct.
And so then when someone goes and tells you, well, this is what really happened, I don't believe that type situation. So we really got to get out in front of it. When the president of the United States is delivering a message, his speech, before he's even finished that speech, news outlets all across this country know what he's going to say before they do it, because we get those emails. And so no different from the city council. They know they're going in and voting on things, what contracts already exist. With just a click of a button, you can go and release the information so people can know firsthand what's really going on.
And it brings a level of transparency, and it increases the level of trust that people have for leadership, which is, I think, one thing that is we're struggling with now. That communication piece. I've watched you for a while. You're like a kindred spirit to me. This is my first time ever telling you that, but that's true. The one thing that I like is that when you speak, you offer a solution behind it, and it's usually represented by a plan. And here lately, you have spoke a lot at city council meetings, on the morning show, about creating and developing an overall plan for the city. Without getting into some specifics or whatever, but touching on certain areas, what would that plan actually look like,
Sure. It has to be a community-involved plan, right? So no one of the 7 city council persons can have everything in their own selves, right? Because one is going to take a majority of votes to move anything. And ultimately, we got to move to unanimous decisions, right? We've got to move to a situation where we're listening to all people in our community, and not just a cliche of people or fashion or what have you, but really taking the energy and time to say, I hear you. And not I hear just get you out of my face, but I hear you, and then here's the evidence I hear, because now you're embedded into this comprehensive plans that we have. We cannot have a piecemeal approach to government, because it's not going to make any sense whatsoever. And so when we talk about a comprehensive plan, we're dealing with every facet of life, from infancy to death at the end of the day, right? And so we know we got failing schools. How can the city really better partner with our education institutions, whether it be from elementary school, with our public school system, whether it be with our community colleges? How are we really embracing all of that, and really looking at Wesleyan College, right? We've got a partnership, but again, when I go through other cities, I'm seeing UNC this all across the community, right? How do we then embrace our private institution, Wesleyan College, who is here, who's offering valuable resources to our community? A lot of times, people who go to college sometimes stay in the community which they went to school at.
That's very true.
And so we really got to look at that as well as to how we're dealing with things. One part, when I go back to our very section, Ward 3, why in the world in our neighborhood do we wake up next to a judicial center?
I knew you go. You've been on this for years, but I want to let you go. That's a good thing. I agree with that. Being the chairman of the Downtown Merchants Association, I'm ecstatic about that idea. But you're absolutely correct that Judicial Center has kind of worn out his welcome on Cokie Road over there. What would be your proposal, or what would you fight for in relation to that?
Certainly, has some thoughts of where it should be. Then it came to me having conversations with others. The perfect location for a Judicial Center is to build a judicial annex right at City Hall.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Right at City Hall,
wow.
In the parking lot area of our police department.
Oh, good.
Okay.
It's still downtown, so.
Downtown all day long. And so, we look at that. Judicial Center being there.
Yeah.
And what I would hope would happen is some lawyers would decide to locate even more downtown community. If we're having cases going on, that some of the jurors would eat at local restaurants in downtown Rocky Mount. People just patronize more things happening in our downtown
people
community.
that are going to court, need,
Absolutely.
and while they're waiting for their turn or whatever, can go have a meal at a local downtown restaurant,
And there's more things than just the court piece that happen. You got DA's office that is there. You have
bail
juvenile
bondsman
courts that is
office.
there. You have the Madison's office is there. So there's a whole bunch of activity that happens at the courts. Or at that Judicial Center that we really could take advantage of. And then we repurpose that building, though. We repurpose
housing or
absolutely,
community center?
absolutely. So from senior living to my favorite thing, a resource center in Ward 3. Okay.
You've talked. Let's talk about that because I kind of touched on that a couple of years ago when I ran about having a resource center over in the Ward 1 area. And you've talked about it for years. You go to every city council meeting. You're like a walking encyclopedia when it comes to the Rocky Mount Council. And you've talked about that at council meetings for years about having resource centers throughout the community. My only spin on it is that they incorporate a lot of technology because I have this weird thing that I feel like we can prepare young people for jobs of tomorrow here. And we can be known for something. You're a tech guy.
Sure.
A lot of people don't know that.
Sure.
You're a tech guy. And so what do you think would be the benefit of those resource centers for people in the community?
One thing that we lack in our community is access to internet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when you look at the pandemic happen and what do? We have remote learning, but some of the issues and ills that happened was that children just didn't have reliable internet. And how did I come about that?
Yeah.
Miss Mary Warren, who's a lifelong resident of the community, had young people going on her porch to use her Wi-Fi access because the mama's data plan ran out, right?
Oh,
and so we know these things are real.
Yeah.
And so when we want children to go from where they are today to where they can be tomorrow, we need to be sure they have all the resources available to them because as a community, that's our responsibility to do that, right? Too often, we place all the blame on the parent, and sometimes the parent is doing everything right, but it's just not enough.
It is.
And so what can we do as a community to share that? But the Resource Center is also an opportunity for mentoring programs where people can go in and have a safe place for people to go, right?
Yeah.
But too often we look at recreational facilities, and I think we play too much.
Right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
So we
need
really
to be
gotta
taught.
be empowered.
All day long. People in the community need to be taught more. They need greater transparency.
How do we deal with crypto investments? So they're talking about technology, and that's going to be app, right? How do we look at metaverse and what that's going to look like, right? So going into the technology arena. So a lot of those things to have resources available at the fingertips, right?
Yeah.
Too often, people got access to a whole bunch of guns and foolishness, but not access to real commodities going to make a difference in communities.
That's a great point. We have to prepare these young people for these jobs of tomorrow. I'm tired of being last in Edgecombe County and everything, from an economic standpoint. And like you, we see opportunities that we've seen work in other places. And in going to that, there's this huge conversation, now about old versus young and, the older generation relinquishing some type of power to the younger generation and working together. How would you mend that gap between old and young in the community?
So certainly bridging the gap, that is so important in a conversation that we got to have.
Yeah.
When you find that our most seasoned community is unwilling to pass the baton, so to speak.
And we run into that a lot. We don't want to say it, but, we understand you baby boomers and, you guys have worked hard, It's your season in a sense, you have a level of authority and power. We just want to help, man, And
I think that brings another question. When you're not willing to relinquish power, you got to ask yourself, what type of image are you really conveying?
Right.
Are you conveying that you have given enough of yourself the young people can follow those footsteps? Or are you afraid that you have not been the right example, that you don't know what might happen if somebody in the next generation take over?
You've been a manager for a while. That's looking at it from a managerial standpoint. Okay. But it's real, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I think that's our biggest disconnect. But I think if we start engaging in more conversations with people, and too often, we don't engage in conversations. We engage in lectures. It's going to be a lecture from one side or the other, right?
Yeah.
And so, but we really got to start listening and hearing people versus waiting for my time to respond, so to speak.
That's a great point. This is Rocky Mount, of course. If you be honest, there's a little bit of a racial divide within the community. How would you work to help that racial divide that exists has existed for years? One of the byproducts of that, I feel as though is Edgecombe County and the lack of development over there. That's all of our problem. How would you be able to convey that to the white community, that we need help over in our communities, and how would you convey to the black community that we need to take more of an ownership in our own communities?
That's the tough question, right? As to how it could be done. You hope you had some magical wand and everybody just get in sync, but the reality is that people have their own backgrounds in which they come from. But too often we purport the ideal of racism everywhere we go. How can you put something to rest that you're always talking about? And so if you're always talking about it, you're thinking that it can never die, so to speak, right? But why don't we just start talking about issues? Because poverty knows no race.
That's right.
At the end of the day,
it's
right?
It's a lot of poor people of all different races.
All day long. So we talk about health outcomes. It knows no race, so to speak.
Right.
And so we really, if we start focusing really on the issue and not who the issue impacts, we'll find that we'll sing the same song. We'll look for the same resources and solutions, because we all got that shared common bond that I want to have a well-balanced life. That I want to have my bank account with more money in it tomorrow than it does today. Right. That I want to know something more today than I did on yesterday.
Right.
And so it's all about the spirit and ideal of growth and achievement that I think will really help bond those things together. So let's not find how far apart we are, but let's start talking about how close we are together.
That's a great point. There's a lot of news that's going on in our local government. I mean, you're right there at the forefront of it. We've changed over city managers. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk a little bit about how you feel the job that was done by Miss Tony, if you don't mind. And what did you feel about the decision to let her go? Or for the decision for her to retire.
No, you said it right.
That's political correctness right there. That's fine.
You said it right the first time, right? So her performance, right? So her performance as being the city manager for the last 4.5 years or so, when you look at what has she accomplished, so it's hard to measure that, because I wish that there was a track record of things that she's done instead of being a forefront, because we're in such a fast-paced world that sometimes we forget some of the things that people make contributions to our community for, right? But when you look at her decisions to hire our fire chief, I think he's doing excellent.
Corey Mercer
here in our community.
Great job. Great guy, too.
I think her decision in hiring Chief Hassel, we're seeing some improvement in our police department.
I finally feel stability in the police department.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think this guy's a rock star. He brings stability. So,
there's a number of things that she certainly has been at the forefront in and changing some of those things. A project you was involved in with the Unity Cemetery. Taking an all-hands-on-deck approach on how do we really get rid of the forest and become the cemetery what it really was intended for, having value and appreciation to that, right?
And she was there, for us. Like a lot of people thought, But Rochelle and I had a great relationship. You know, she was there, you know, to provide whatever resources we needed for that project. So,
and my piece to a city manager is no matter where the city manager is, they're only as good as their council.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
They bring her here, they hire her, they give her direction, him or her direction, you know, so her failure is in part their failure, you think?
And her success.
Yeah, is their success.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think having a succinct council that is moving all together towards a positive growth in our community for everybody, I think is the key for any manager to be successful. Now,
and what do you think about the decision to...
The decision.
Yeah, the great decision.
Yeah, right.
I know Pastor Smith will be on the edge of his seat.
So, you know, when I look at her leaving, no city manager is going to stay anywhere forever.
Correct.
At the end of the day. I do think that the timing of her leaving was a poor timing.
You got a lot of things going on.
All day. All day. So when you think about how do we find a qualified candidate or qualified candidates who will apply for the position, knowing you got an upcoming election going on.
Yeah.
What does that look like, right? Then you have a situation where there's a number of vacancies currently. Don't know if that'll still be the case when the new city manager's hired.
Yeah.
But to fill those positions, then I'm saying, okay, do we go back to a 2017 where they say the next city manager is hiring all of his or her friends again?
Right.
Then you have concerns about our current elected city council as to what people feel about the council as a whole and their transparency, all this kind of stuff. And so then would citizens in the community value a person in which they select as a city manager?
Yeah, that's where the battle is going to be. The battle is going to be finding her replacement, you know. And, you know, I would love to see a lot of community involvement in dealing with that, you know. Like I said, I you know, Rochelle and I, we started out our relationship really, really rocky. You know, we don't want to get into that. We all know. But the one thing that was troubling, I don't know if you heard it from me, was the employee morale part of it. You know, I remember a few years ago we spent X amount of dollars for an audit team to come in and, you know, do an internal audit on the employee situation. I think it was one of the facets of it, and employee morale was pointed out at that time as being a real serious issue. And being a manager for so long, you know, when you lose your team, you lose your team. You know, and sometimes they just need a different voice in the locker room, you know, to kind of motivate them a little bit. That's what I'm mostly worried about, because like you, we see and have to deal with the lack of staff at City Hall. And that affects customer service, that affects, you know, community engagement. And so that's a tough thing to have to kind of overcome, you know. What do you think about Mr. Varney?
So, you know, he's been here, 44 years?
Yeah.
And so he knows the community. He has already had relationships. And so when you talk about someone to hold a ship,
perfect.
You know, it just makes perfect sense for him to be a part of that. And then a quick decision to say, hey, we don't need to renew the finance director's or contract for this financial service that we're doing. I think we can find a permanent
$16,000 a month. You know, I think that's what we was.
That's what it was. And the reality is, you know, people say, "Oh, we're going to save $16,000 a month." Well, you're probably not, because when you hire a finance director, one, anybody's worth their grain of salt is going to command a salary, right? And so while we just see the front end of the salary, we forget all the benefits associated with it. And so it's going to be around the same amount of money. So we're not going to see a significant savings, I don't think, on hiring a finance director. Again, it's worth their grain of salt. Because you're dealing with over $200+ million.
Yes.
Now I can't pay nobody $30,000 a year that's dealing with that type of money.
What was it, like 224?
Well, it's going to fluctuate throughout the year. So they're going to vote on the budget, and then it's going to be amended throughout the year because the city is going to receive grants, or, you know, the government might be issuing some additional dollars, and departments are applying for this, that, and the third. So it always goes up based on that. So the amended budget becomes a final situation, but they're going to adopt a budget of some level of $212 million, somewhere thereabout. But by the end of the year, it might be 230 or 240 something.
Correct. So, you know, I'm getting used to this shortened show. You know, when you go on TV.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Time is matter.
Man, I want to run my mouth all day. Let's talk a little bit about. I want to give you a good one before we go. First of all, before I do that, I want to ask you: do you still believe in Rocky Mount and the greater good of the city in your heart of hearts? You know, sometimes we can go about our, everyday life, and things become kind of, we in sports we call it going through the motions of everyday life. But sometimes, do you sit and look out and still feel that you felt when you first decided to run for office? Do you feel like, I believe in this place. I believe that it can get better and things can get better and the vision that I see can be accomplished?
Absolutely. And if I didn't think that it wouldn't, I would pack up my bags and leave.
I'm
right?
with you, yeah.
So certainly I believe in Rocky Mount, and I believe what Rocky Mount can do collectively. We put some of this past foolishness behind us, and move together, and not be afraid to embrace conversation with people who may not look like us,
correct,
who don't have same backgrounds as we've got to deal with people all across the spectrum, because everybody, we got to get Rocky Mount to a place though where everybody said, I've got to be in Rocky Mount.
That's why I think that that's another issue with that older generation. Sometimes I feel like they're still trying to pay back for Jim Crow.
Okay.
This is our opportunity. We finally got power. Mm-hmm. We're going to make it pay.
Right.
Whereas young people that are African American in their 20s and 30s, there's a serious disconnect with the civil rights movement. When you think about it, when I was young and I studied World War II in history class, I didn't know anything. I'm studying what I read on paper.
Okay.
And there's a lot of young people in the community that don't relate to that. They've grown up with, going to school with, kids that don't look like them, or the same color as them. And they're not understanding, they're tuned out of that racial fight that, they're having on this level, How do we close that, man? Is there a way of closing that? I know through communication and talking and getting young people more engaged in the process, get them out to vote more, and what else do you think?
That comprehensive plan that's inclusive of everybody, right? But and to your point, I think that the young generation is about, hey, we got to win. That's what it's about, right?
That's right. You guys are going for it too.
That's just what it is at the end of the day. And so we don't have time to worry about the past, because you can't change the past. So what I can do is deal with how I'm moving going forward. Right. And so that's where we are. And we're gonna get there at the end of the day.
Well, that concludes this episode. I'm so disappointed because I just want to keep talking and talking and talking. You're gonna have to have me on the morning show, man.
Okay.
We're gonna have to talk some more.
We
man.
got an hour and a half there, right?
Right. I can talk to this guy all day, man, and ask questions, man. Once again, you guys keep a lookout for him. He's Bronson Williams. Please catch him weekday mornings from 7:30 to 9 a.m. on WNCR TV, local station, channel 20. I know you told me never to say the station, but we're in Rocky Mount.
Okay.
Local station, channel 20. You can catch them there. See them at the polls, knocking on your doors over in Ward 3. So we have this movement going on where we want to get young people more engaged and more involved. And this is one of the individuals that's at the forefront of that. And I thank you, sir, for your service and whatever and all the things you do in the community.
Well, thank you as well.
And we got to talk some more, man. I want to talk, man.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.